Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder. And our program today is on the ancient elements of earth, fire, water, and air. We're going to talk about how those are such a natural part of our awareness, of our DNA. It's what, for most of human history, people believed was what made up everything there was.
It's really fascinating to consider that when our ancestors, truly ancient ancestors, a couple of thousand years ago or more, started looking at the world and trying to discern it, to figure it out, to understand it better. I mean, what was going on here, how it worked, what is space, what is time, and you know, Steve, when I say it's fascinating, the Greeks came up with these four, Africans came up with these four, a few variations. Asians had the same four, few variations. I think the Chinese include wood, for example.
And metal.
And metal, maybe that's it, yeah. And again, variations on a theme. Indigenous people in North and Central South America as well had these same concepts of these basic elements. Well, look, there's earth, obviously, there's air, and sometimes called wind. There is water, and then, of course, I think the most miraculous for the ancients must have been fire, the quest for fire.
Yeah, fire is, the least naturally occurring. It's like it doesn't always happen, and it was indeed a lifetime quest for many people to find that fire until we figured out how to make it. Some of the ancients also added a fifth element that they called the ether, the space, the substance that all this stuff exists within, But for the purposes of our show today, we want to talk about the allegories of earth and fire and water and air to the human being, to the way we live, to the way we view our universe. The connection that earth obviously has to our physical matter, to our body, that fire has to our visions, our ideas, our light bulbs going off, our creativity, igniting our passion. And then water, of course, has always been the metaphor and the allegory used in emotional discussions, how calm water can be seen deeply into. And then air, the ability that rises above it all, the ability to step up and see the thoughts and the feelings and the body and all as not who we are, but parts of who we are, and to recognize that we are the awareness, the part that rises above everything.
Yeah, so in a sense, we're talking about a really old, and therefore having stood the test of time, probably a pretty darn valuable model for who we are and how we interface with the world around us, the visible world, but also our ancestors were very aware of the invisible world, that which is unseen and can't be touched, but can be felt and experienced inside. So the emotional nature is definitely part of this, and I think that reveals a real intelligence. Water is an emotion that's very distinct from the mental nature. Plato, for example, combined them when he talked about mind, body, and soul. Here the soul would correspond to what we're calling consciousness or awareness, the air aspect. But mind and body would be the fire and the earth. Where is the water in Plato's model? Where is the emotional nature? Well, like mental health specialists even today in the 21st century, they often get bound up. And so as we have physical doctors, MDs, we have mental health specialists, they may have PhDs, they may be doctors of psychology or psychiatry, but there's no real emotional health specialist. That's the purview of the mental health specialist to handle the way we think and feel. So I think it's to separate that out and see it, as our ancients did, as an element all by itself, even a different level of intelligence, or I don't mean to say different level, a different quality of intelligence, Steve, that is reflected, water, what's better to reflect than water, in these really old models or paradigms. It's like an old memory peg system, really.
Yeah, There are lots of ways of looking at this same metaphor. I mean, we used the example of the car. Well, the earth could be the physical car, and then the fire could be the steering wheel, and the water could be the gas pedals, and the air could be you driving the car from above. Lots of different ways of looking at this metaphor, but let's look at them. Let's look at each of those and what it means to us. I've been thinking about each of these things and earth and what it means to me, and what occurs to me was the concept of I am earth. I mean, I am the food that I absorb and don't eliminate is me for a while until a few years later those atoms change over to others. But for a while, my physical me is from the food that I eat and the water that I drink and the air that I breathe. And so I'm thinking, when I'm thinking earth, I'm thinking about the more I can raise the quality of the substance, the basics of my food, my air intake, my water and the stuff, the more I can make my body purer, the more I can make this earth thing a temple, if you will, the better all the other things will work. You know, the better the thoughts will work, the better the feelings will work, the more I have to live for by taking a look at this wonderful gift that came out of the ground and the air, you know, and the water that we drink that became a body. It's an amazing thing.
Again, I'm really intrigued and fascinated that this was better understood by the ancients than by us in many cases. I mean, Earth is so obviously the physical body. What, as you just said, is the physical body made out of? But elements of all the lower kingdoms, you know. Many people eat animals who eat the plants to get at the minerals. Many people just eat the plant directly to get the value of the plant and the mineral. But notice how at each level there's a reliance on the level before it. Plants have to have minerals. You have to feed, you know, nutrients, chemical compounds, and in some cases elements, and that allows the plant to produce some sort of, you know, fruit or vegetable, something yummy that you can eat. And then the animals eat that, and they get all the greens and the chlorophylls as well. And then, again, we eat the animal or the plant directly. That's a beautiful system. You can see how that evolved, right? So in terms of a physical body, we are what we eat. We are the earth, the mineral kingdom, and the plant kingdom, and the animal kingdom. All of that is the earth of our physical being.
Yeah, we are what we absorb from what we eat, because a lot of stuff we eat gets eliminated, fortunately. But what we hold on to, that which our body likes and finds nutritious and good for it, it holds on to, and that's who we become. We pull the minerals, we pull the value out of the proteins and the fats and the carbs that we need out of the foods that we eat to become a physical body. And then, of course, the body itself and how we treat that body in terms of sleep, in terms of exercise, in terms of stress. You know, how do we treat this thing in terms of our attitude about our life and the way we actually live it? You know, there is great need for this body to be moving around. You know, it's for millions of years it had to run and jump and do a lot of things physically every single day. And now there are a lot of people who spend most of their time, the vast majority of their time, sitting in a position that is unnatural. Sitting is a position that's unnatural. Squatting is a position that's natural. Sitting in a chair is a position that's unnatural to the human being. I mean, it's a new thing, relatively speaking. So we spend a lot of time being in a position that's not normal.
I'm practicing, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm getting good at that, sitting in a chair.
And not running, not climbing, not jumping, not using muscles that we're meant to use, you know?
Yeah, well, it comes back on you. If you don't do that, you get creaky, you get old, and you feel the need to get out and do it. Whether we do it or not is another issue. The second element that we want to talk about is fire, and Steve, this corresponds to the mental nature to our thoughts.
Right, especially the creative thoughts. There's really several kinds of thoughts if you think about it. We did a show on thinking about thinking. There's the kind of thought that just goes by in the stream of consciousness, in the train of thought that you're not even aware of, just going by. Then there's those thoughts going by that you become aware of, and you're noticing particular thoughts that go by. And then there's the purposeful thoughts that you have, where you create the thoughts that go in that stream, and you decide what thoughts. And of course, we always have to say that none of those is who you are. Who you are is the awareness of the fact that you have these different kinds of thoughts. But the key here is of all those thoughts that do go by, which ones do you notice? And which ones do you jump on and repeat and consider and spend time with and become enthralled with and become interested in and become impassioned by. See, that's the real key. Lots of thoughts go by, lots and lots of them, but which ones catch your attention? Which ones grab your interest? Which ones cause you to be on fire? And that's the kind of thoughts that really light us up, the thoughts that create new ideas, the thoughts that ignite innovation and invention and interest, and the thoughts that create intuition and impulse and all kinds of those wonderful feelings, that the thoughts that make us go forward and jump and do something.
This can be a complex field. This is not the time or the place to get too deeply into the different kinds of thought. We can summarize a little bit. For example, much of our thinking is driven by anxiety. A lot of what we think about is worry. It's invented. It's a nightmare, a bad dream.
It's preparing for the worst, so somehow you'd be prepared when the worst happens, and if anything good happens, then, well, I can handle that. But the problem is, by preparing for the worst, what you do, of course, is create a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you create the worst happening.
It's not only that, it's after you're done preparing for the worst, you do it over again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, always looking for a little variation so that I can have some sort of reason to continue to worry. Somebody once said worry's like a rocking chair because it feels like you're getting something done. You know, really, what's insidious about worry is it feels like you're accomplishing a lot. People say, well, what'd you do about it? Well, I thought about it all day long. And then you stand up out of the rocking chair and you're right where you started.
And yet, if you spend that time thinking about things going right, or you spend that time like rehearsing the best possible outcome, they'll tell you to get your head out of the clouds and put your feet on the ground and do some serious worrying here. You got a problem, you know. So the idea is preparing for the best is frivolous. Preparing for the best is not a good idea, because then if the worst happens, you're unprepared and you'll be devastated. Well, see, to me, that's the key right there. This tremendous fear so many people have of disappointment, the fear of if I don't get what I dream of, what I want, then I'll be in a terrible state. The idea that if I let my hopes get up there and they get dashed, it'll be devastating to me. That's the problem. See, there's no penalty in having great big dreams and accomplishing many of them, if not all of them. The penalty is not having the big dreams. The penalty is settling for what you've got. Most of the thoughts that you have are the same thoughts you had. See, that's the key. The thoughts that really cause the fire to ignite are the new thoughts that you have, the thoughts that you have about the thoughts that you have in new ways to think about the thoughts that you have been thinking all your life. That's where you light the fire. By doing something new, by doing something different, by seeing things from a different perspective. If you can't change the stimulus in your life, at least you can change your perspective. You can change the perception you have of that stimulus, and of course, that gives you tremendous freedom to recreate new responses.
So this then begs the question, hopefully obvious to you, well, how do I get to that place? How do I find that little nook, that little safe harbor inside my brain where I can climb out of the thought stream and get above it, as Steve is saying here? How can I be more than just the thought, but rather, from an elevated point of view, the awareness that looks at the thought process and decides the quality of this thought, the value of this thought over here, the appropriateness of that, and then decides to run through it all again. And then maybe some automatic tendency to worry pops up, but you've got an awareness that says, no, we did that. You know, we really covered that. And I think we can better use the time to think in this way. This is what the fire of the mind is really about. It's not just thinking, but, as we said a few shows back, thinking about thinking.
Right. The idea of, instead of just letting those stream of consciousness thoughts go by and notice some and not notice others, choose the ones that really seem brighter, seem more alive to you. The idea is all these thoughts go by, and, you know, what you want to do is recognize most of them are thoughts you already had, and you don't need to spend a whole lot of time on those thoughts, especially the negative worry thoughts. You want to re-experience the positive believing in yourself kinds of thoughts over and over again, but the negative worry thoughts, you can let those go. But what you want to do is notice, out of all those thoughts that do pop by, which ones seem to spark interest, and that's how you determine which are the thoughts that you want to catch the fire, you want to really put your energy into the ones that bring up the emotion, the ones that cause you to be interested in them, the ones that make you feel something. Why do you notice? You get home and you're flipping through the channels with your remote, channel, flip. Why do you stay on one channel? Because there's something passionate about that thing that causes your heart to jump. And that's the next thing. That's, once the mind is looking for something, what's it looking for? It's looking at all the ideas, understanding them all, but what it's looking for is something that's going to catch its heart on fire.
So managing the emotion, learning to calm the waters, okay, because this is the third element now. Water is your emotional nature, the essence of subjectivity. You can think like a lot of people, and probably do. That could be a good or a bad thing, but you probably only feel like yourself. It's pretty difficult to imagine getting inside somebody else's skin, but if you think about it for a while, I think most would agree that'd be a very different experience.
It's a safe bet that no two people feel exactly the same way.
About anything.
How could they possibly?
Right. It seems to contradict the uniqueness of the universe.
Yeah, it's unfathomable.
We all have our own.
Of course, there may be that one exception, it's just as the universe.
Haven't come across it.
Who knows?
Yet.
Haven't ever seen it.
You mean the one crow that is not black?
Yeah, the black swan, right? Yeah.
Whatever it takes. There may be those. Water. This is such an important concept. As we said a few minutes ago, the idea that the ancients had an element for the emotional nature as distinct from the mental nature. Water is about as different from fire as could be. Water can extinguish fire, and fire can heat the water and create steam, as in anger. That would be the over-the-top emotion, fear-based emotion, very closely related to hatred, all of it anxiety and stress. The thoughts and feelings that we all have, the mental and emotional nature, have a relationship that most of us haven't worked out yet. We tend to act out of the emotion, especially when we're disturbed, when the waves are choppy on the water, there's a storm, there's a tsunami coming in, a water spout over here, right? Tornado over water. We're all emotionally worked up. We take an action, and then afterwards, maybe we think about it, we rationalize it. What conscious women and men learn to do is to become mentally polarized so that you use the mind to calm the emotional nature and use that calm emotional nature then to quiet the mind. It works together. It's beautiful symbiotic relationship between the mental and emotional nature as we learn to manage both the water and the fire that impacts the earth.
Sure. So, like you're paying attention to something that catches your interest, that sparks your interest, and all of a sudden you have a thought about it, and then you have a feeling about that thought, and then you have a feeling about that feeling, and then you have a thought about, and it's thought, feeling, balance. It's like when you're driving the car, it's the steering wheel and the gas pedal and the brake all working in harmony, all working in symmetry. Sometimes a little more of this, sometimes a little more of that, but they're all working together. That's how thoughts and feelings work. It's not a bunch of thoughts and then that ends, and then a bunch of feelings. It's thought, feeling, thought, feeling, thought, feeling, and it's the interplay, it's the exchange between, it's the words and music, the exchange between the two that makes the whole world go around. It's the ability for the body to experience in the mind part, the brain-mind part, the thoughts, and in the heart-mind part, the feelings, and let this body experience that interplay of thoughts and feelings together, but to be able to do it from that higher consciousness place, that fourth place, which of course is the air, the part that rises above the awareness of it all, the higher consciousness that knows that you are a body and you are thoughts and you are feelings, but you really are the awareness of the fact that you're all the above and more.
Sometimes this is called the wind as a basic element, and we also see in esoteric philosophy corollary to the word as a spoken word. And the first manifestation of creating physical existence would be for a creator, the creator, if you will, the most absolute, to speak a word with air, with a voice that says, let there be light, or whatever. And so there are a number of different models that use air or the wind or the word or the voice, but primarily we're going to use it as a simple corollary, like I said, an ancient memory peg for the awareness that stands above the lower three, that stands above the trinity of earth as the physical body, fire as the mental body, and water as the emotional body. Standing above and behind and everywhere equally present is air, just like consciousness, everywhere equally present. Air's in fire, air's in water, and air's in earth. Air is everywhere.
The air is everywhere. So we have this air, this ability to step out of being our body and being our thoughts and being our feelings, and to rise above, to see the big picture, to step out of being stuck in the body. It's a really unique perspective. I'm not sure any other animal can do that, to step out of and to look at oneself, to be able to become so self-aware that you can actually observe yourself doing what you're doing and choose to continue or choose to change. I mean, the ability to be so self-aware, you could look at each individual thought and feeling as they bounce back and forth and decide, I like this, I agree with that. Oh no, I don't like that one. I'm going to choose to release the power that thought or that feeling has over me. That's the amazing thing that the higher consciousness has. It has the ability to embrace thoughts and feelings it loves and to release inert the thoughts and feelings it doesn't love.
I get really curious when I run into people sometimes who have a standard stock political view of the world as Republicans and Democrats or conservatives and liberals. And to me, I see this evolution of awareness, just like Darwin's evolution of the physical species, that we're unfolding, we're growing mentally and emotionally, in many ways physically too. We're bigger, stronger, we live longer. There's an unfoldment. Look at the new sports records are being broken all the time. When will it end? Can you imagine? Where will the pole vault be in 100 years? Or will somebody run the 100-meter dash in under 9 seconds? I mean, who knows? The times keep getting shorter, the distances longer and higher. We're unfolding. We're coming forth. It's likely we are capable of things mentally and emotionally and physically, and the air too, spiritually, that we've scarcely begun to imagine, to even dream that we could do. And to begin that process now, just as a dream, is courageous. There seems to be an urgency in life to grow, to be more everywhere we look. I mean, even healing is automatic. Something breaks on us, it generally gets better all by itself.
So if we can adapt that perception of the higher consciousness of being above and seeing who we are from that perspective, then we can let go of that debilitating factor that causes us to not be able to be positive, that causes us to fear being positive, and that's, of course, that tremendous fear of disappointment. Disappointment isn't real if you understand that as a higher consciousness, you're not attached to the outcome. As a higher consciousness, you wouldn't want to be attached to that particular goal or vision or dream having to come true, because then you're eliminating the possibility of something even better than that happening. What you want to do, of course, is hold real loosely to the outcome and put all of your passion into moving in the direction of. So that's the coolest thing, because no matter how excited you get about something, it's never too excited because it's okay if you don't get all the way there.
I just saw the top of somebody's head blowing off and steam coming out of their ears like a cartoon.
Well, some of the greatest things in the world got caused by people having exactly that experience. Like, oh man, I want to give it my all because it's just such an incredible dream. Now, let me define a dream as a thought that your emotions just really jumped on and went, yes, I really want that. That kind of thing is really valuable, whether or not it comes true, because moving in the direction of it is what lightens the heart. Moving in the direction of it is what causes you to feel happiness. Moving in the direction of it is what unveils your gifts and talents and abilities and teaches you so much about yourself. It doesn't really matter if you ever get there. Just having a dream and moving toward it is what makes you feel much, much more alive.
Now, let me hasten to acknowledge that there are many other variations or versions of these four elements and how they're applied. There are versions in tarot, in the various decks, in the Kabbalah, in Rosicrucianism, in esoteric philosophy, in theosophy, in the Bailey material. There are countless other references that are essentially more veiled and more esoteric that we're not going to explore in the limited time we have. But it's just such a smart idea, I think, to use this old memory peg system, really, to honor the ancients and the way they used these elements, not as a literal construct of everything in the world having to be made out of earth or fire or water or air, but in a more general way, elements that represent aspects or parts of the self. As we've described, the physical body being a correspondence to the element that is earth. That would be dirt and rocks and mountains, all right? A mental body that corresponds to the purification of fire. And in a way, the mental fire is a focus, if you will, the way a magnifying glass will focus light, of determination, of intention, or of willpower. That would be the fire of the mental nature. The water corresponds to the emotional, as we've said before, and then if you can get this fourth element, this is where it really all comes together, and that's the idea of air, which, think about it, is everywhere equally present, being the correspondent to the idea of consciousness or awareness itself. This whole series is called Finding Yourself in Paradise. This is the higher self, the true self, the self that always comes from love, never doubts, never worries. You've had glimpses. You can put the four elements together in such a way. You can learn to manage all of this and go there on demand increasingly and bring with you the benefits of visiting paradise, the alpha brainwave level, right? And applying these four parts of yourself. And today we'll do an audio journey to help you look at it from an elemental point of view.
So just some thoughts that I had this week about what to do with this as a memory peg. For me, it's about, for my body, for the earth part, just pay attention to what I eat consciously and exercise and think about my body, pay attention to it. From a thought point of view, it's notice which thoughts capture my attention. Don't let them just go floating by. Pay more time being conscious of this train of thought, of this stream of consciousness going by, and pick out the good ones. And what causes me to pick out the good ones, because I'm being aware, is my emotions. And so what do I care about? Not what do I think about. What do I care about is really what's most important. So of the stuff I'm thinking about, what do I care about? And I grab onto my emotional nature, and I manage my emotions, because I can come, regardless of whether the emotion is exciting and passionate in that way, or passionate, like you said, from a very deep feeling hopeful and confident and joyful. I mean, passion doesn't have to be bubbling. It can be quite calm and quite quiet, but it's intense. And as the emotions calm, whether they're hot or cold emotions, you can look deeply into them and understand them more. And then, of course, that allows you to step through to that higher consciousness place. And I think the lesson that runs through all of these Finding Yourself in Paradise programs is about this higher consciousness. Is about, to find yourself in paradise, you have to step out of the ego self and step into the higher self. And the higher self is simple to know. It's the part that always feels love, it always feels safe, and it's the ego that feels endangered and it feels fear.
I'm often reminded of, and haven't mentioned in quite a while, that wonderful story that Eckhart Tolle tells in the beginning of The Power of Now, where he talks about waking up depressed in the middle of the night and saying, I can't live with myself like this. And that's an understandable thought. We would say, I can't stand myself when I feel this way, or I hate myself in this color, or why do I do that? I hate it when I do that. And what Tolle did that was so different was ask another question. Basically, hey, if I can't stand myself, how many of me are there?
Yeah, who's the I that can't stand the myself? You know,
And who's the myself that's
Not being
upsetting this I over here? It's a very fair question.
Yeah.
Lewis Carroll asks it of Alice in Wonderland through the caterpillar. It's the hookah-smoking caterpillar that asks Alice, "Who are you?" And she says, "Well, I don't know. I've been big and I've been small today, and I'm inside a rabbit hole and I'm talking to a caterpillar, and well, I don't really know." And Caterpillar says sternly, "What do you mean by that? Explain yourself." And Alice says, "I can't, because I am not myself, you see."
There's at least two of you in there, and actually there's three if you think about the part that can step out and look at the fact that there are two of you and they're talking to each other. You know,
there are multiple perspectives,
lots of ways of looking at it.
But the basic dichotomy of having a perspective or a point of view that tends to be darker, more nihilistic, more negative, even if you call it more realistic, depending upon your moods and attitudes and belief systems, and then a higher polarity, if you will, that you could consciously choose to ascend to, an elevated perspective where the horizons are broader. You can see more than you saw when you were way down in the pit, right? Now you're up above it all. Oh, I'm starting to see. There's more light up here. And we start getting bigger concepts. We start seeing things in more inclusive ways. We start thinking of our neighbor as somebody who doesn't just live in my block or my community, but in my world. And we start looking for you and me resolutions to problems rather than you or me, who's right, who's wrong. You know, you watch cable news, you'd never know this was happening because of all the emphasis on you or me, right or wrong. But I really feel it in the world, and I think there's a definite desire in the world that is being expressed in so many ways, including the new media on the internet, a longing really for a more inclusive attitude, respect and tolerance for people who disagree. You don't have to kill somebody just because they disagree with you.
So we're understanding that we are the earth, we're the bodies, and that we're our thoughts and feelings, the fire and the emotion. But I think what we're really starting to understand is that it is in the air, that the air is not just us. The air is everywhere. The air is everybody else, too. So when we get into that higher consciousness, we become part of the collective consciousness. We become us and not just a separate me. That's one of the most beautiful parts about the higher self, is that it knows it's not alone. It knows that there's a zillion other things that are part of this energy that is energy, that is all the energy.
Lovely, no more.
It's all the air, you know. It's everywhere.
Let's do an audio journey, Steve, and let's talk about appropriating earth, fire, water, and air just to integrate, to organize, and to synthesize the parts of you to be better at everything you choose to apply yourself to, okay? So, take a nice, slow, deep breath, filling your lungs, and as you exhale, close your eyes and relax.
And with each breath that you release, let go of tension, anxiety, confusion, replaced by relaxation and calmness and peace of mind. That's what you find here in paradise, in this place of perfect peace where you're safe and can release all the fear, all the anger, all the negativity that you possess. Now you can release it all. For the moment, you can get it all off your chest and feel safe and secure. Feel focused and pure and connected to all you can be. Here in this peaceful place, in this mind-heart space, you feel the harmony
in this beautiful place of perfect peace that you've created for yourself, perhaps in your mind's eye, or the sounds of peace, relaxation, and safety. Or maybe just a feeling in your body that everything's just fine. In fact, better than fine. I feel really quite remarkable. And if part of you says, yeah, well, I'm just making it up, say, yeah, I am. I'm doing it exactly right. I'd like you to consider the part of yourself that is most obvious at first, your appearance, the physical body, your performance, and your health, how you feel physically, how you appear to other people, your reliance upon the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the mineral kingdom.
So stay connected to the earth. Dig your toes into the ground. Spread your arms into the sky and feel the earth beneath your feet. Pay attention to what you eat. Pay attention to how you sleep. Pay attention to how you move and stretch and use your physical body. And the clearer that body is, the purer that body is, the more it can ignite the fire.
And now gently lift your awareness from your body into the place in your head where you relate to yourself as mental. Go into your head. Begin to think. Think about my voice, the suggestions and affirmations I offer you, and you can think about your responses. You can think any thought you want. You are more than your physical body. You are more than your thoughts. And yet the most important role that the mental nature plays is the assertion of willpower as intention. This is also the home of perseverance, determination, even a willingness to learn from mistakes or to allow yourself to become embittered and fall into an emotional chasm.
So pay attention to what you think. And as the thoughts go by, choose the ones that you want to embrace with a breath. Choose the ones you want to release by releasing breath. Be conscious of your thoughts and notice which ones make you feel, which ones you care about, which ones stir the emotions inside.
Acknowledge the unconscious back and forth, the way in which a thought will generate a feeling, and the way that emotional response will generate another thought, and the back and forth of thoughts and feelings, and yet, who are you in all of this? In order to understand yourself as the awareness, the element of air, standing above the lower three, the mind must assert its will to relax and feel safe. The will to love, the will to know the truth, the will to take a minute to breathe, to relax, and calm the emotional waters. Just imagine now as if you were sitting next to a little pond, or maybe floating in the center of the pond in a little boat, watching those gentle waves, even if they were only little wind-driven ripples, slowly fade until the surface of the pond is smooth as glass.
Allowing you to see deeply into your heart, into your feelings, into what matters and what you care about the most. And use that to move your thoughts, to empower your body to take action and create what you wish. The thoughts discern the things that are of interest. The feelings become the gas pedal that propel you toward it with perseverance and determination of thought and passion of the heart, leading the body in the direction it needs to go, all the while knowing, all the while aware that you're not the body or the thoughts or the feelings alone, that you're the air, you're the awareness, you're everywhere.
So when the earth nature, the physical body, is still, and the fire burns brightly, though focused, deliberate, and the mental nature wavers not. And when, thirdly, the emotional waters are calm and undisturbed, you become aware of yourself as awareness itself, as a consciousness that is everywhere equally present, as we find in 3 of the 4 classical forms of love: eros, or sexual love, the love of affection, and the love of friendship. This is what the Greeks called agape. This is the love of everyone and all things, to see yourself in every living thing, and that which is unitive and divine as being imbued in all living things, like air, everywhere equally present.
So be earth, be fire, be water, and be air, and see yourself as everywhere, omnipresent, focused and clear, paying attention to the thoughts of love, releasing the feelings of fear. Let the thoughts of love be the steering wheel. As you release the fear, step off the brake. And then put your passion into what you care about most. And that becomes the gas pedal. And you take your foot and you put it on the gas pedal, the passion, and feel it strong. And that's what pushes the vision along. But all the while, know you're not that pedal or that steering wheel at all. It's you that's driving the car. It's you that's standing tall above as the air, as the aware being. In that step back, big picture, amazing kind of seeing. You are earth, fire, water, as seen from the higher self, from the air.
Calm the waters, focus the fire, and move forward. And when you find yourself acting reflexively, knee-jerk, from an emotional nature and thinking about it later, remind yourself it's not emotion, action, thought. By drawing upon your awareness of self as awareness itself, by identifying as the 4th element of air, you can be mentally polarized and put that steering wheel in the right direction, and then accelerate with emotion to create the desired outcome. It's the fire that drives the water that manifests in the world.
So you are all, and you can use this to move forward and create what you choose. Your mind and all its many languages and metaphors are all powerful tools for you to use. So in a few moments, we're going to return to the earth, where there is lots of fire and water and air. But from this experience in this paradise place, and wherever you are, anywhere, remember, the body is sacred. The thoughts and feelings interact, but none of them is you. You can step back into the air and become aware of who you truly are. You're a being, and you emanate light, just like a star. In a few moments, we'll ask you to return to wide awake, and from this experience, take that feeling that comes as you realize all that you are. Bring that feeling of being a star. As you take a deep breath and bring yourself back to wide awake.
Feeling fine, rested, I always feel rejuvenated and recharged and ready to go no matter what time of day or night. That's a good reason to meditate in the morning, to do these exercises rather than in the evening, because sometimes you get a second wind and, it's 8 o'clock at night, you're washing windows and sweeping the floor. And do it in the morning. Open your day. Ideally, there's two approaches to meditation in that way. There's like a meditation in the morning to set up for the day, and then the evening meditation is a nice review of that day with a little bit of planning the next day on the end of it. So,
meditation has bookends, and you don't have to totally let go of all of your thoughts to meditate. It's meditating that causes your thoughts to fade away.
We're going to keep repeating that again. Contemplation is a beautiful, high and holy goal, but guided imagery and just honoring the feelings, or if you're auditory, the voices in your head, so to speak, as long as they come from love, they are trustworthy and deserving of respect. People that have serious psychotic problem with voices in their head will tell you they come from a dark, horrible place. They don't like them. They're not friendly and charming or fun in any way. So the affect is really how you know. It's how do I feel? Does this feel positive and loving? Does it feel kind? Do I want everybody to win? Do I want everybody to get along? And do I see unity through harmony rather than victory in the old sense? Those are just some of the ways we know that we've begun to find ourselves in paradise.
So of all those thoughts that there are, the ones that go by that you hardly notice or don't notice at all because they don't have any emotional attachment to you, and then the ones that go by that you do notice and decide to do nothing with, that you notice them and they go on by, those thoughts are there too. And then there's the ones that are going on by and then you grab onto them that you really notice and they've got some kind of passion attached to them, they've got some kind of emotion attached to them. Use those thoughts, the ones that grab your attention, use those thoughts to create the more powerful kind of thought, which is the purposeful thought. Use those thoughts to grab your interest, like, wow, that's an interesting topic, let me think about that, and then move away from that over and over again, thinking the same things you've been thinking, and start to move into a new kind of thinking by grabbing onto one of the thoughts that go by that grabs your attention, that you're interested in, and think about that thought.
Hey, we'd love to get some suggestions from you on future topics, titles, areas of discussion or exploration. Not that we're going to run out. We've been doing this all of our lives, but we'd like to be sensitive to your interests, to have our fingers on your pulse, so to speak. So email us at Focused Passion. Right back to the newsletter. Just address it newsletter at Focused Passion. There's an ED in Focused. Newsletter at focusedpassion.com, and make your suggestions, your comments, ask any questions you think we might be able to help you with something. Don't hesitate to let us know in that regard. Be sure and visit focusedpassion.com if you haven't been back, because maybe you're using players on your machine instead of our built-in player. Well, remember, a couple of great reasons to go back. It's always growing, it's always changing and improving, but you've got the Share One with a Friend gadget on the built-in audio player. You can send as many of these programs as you'd like to as many people as you want, as often as you wish. No charge whatsoever for that. And also, Steve, there's that button about the programs that our listeners have yet to purchase.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole catalog of almost 100 shows that we've got under our belts and topics that range from A to Z. And in fact, we just put that into a list, like a menu the other day that I showed to a group of corporate executives that I was working with, and I said, circle the ones you're interested in, and some were circled 1 and circled 3, and one guy circled the whole thing. He said, I want all of them, you know? So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff, and if you've got a particular issue going on in your life, whether it's like a goal issue or a healing yourself, so, you know, problem to solve or a heart to heal, we can help you with that. There's lots of programs out there dealing with difficult people and adjusting your attitude and dealing with your physical body in terms of releasing excess pounds. All kinds of wonderful shows that we've got right there waiting for you. Just hit the unpurchased podcast button, and they're less than $1 a piece.
Hey, thanks for your interest. Thanks for your support. We'll talk to you next week. As always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.